The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Good evening, people.
Vlad Costa from Bitcoin Takeover podcast and magazine.
I like shitcoins.
They're the best. Moving on to issue one. The price of Bitcoin. The price is up. The price is $122,060. That's $1 for 819 Satoshis, well on the other side of the 1,000 Satoshi barrier. The price is up 1.03% in the last 24 hours, with a high of 23,890, a low of 119,340. According to CNBC, Bitcoin is getting a shutdown boost. More money could rotate into the crypto and out of gold. Last week, there were fears that the government shutdown in the United States could cause a collapse for Bitcoin, but the collapse was short-lived, probably people just rotating out of Bitcoin into their stocks, getting ready to cover their positions, as no one knew which way it would go for the government shutdown. It started out as if it was going up, and early articles of this article said that it was a winning week and that the government shutdown didn't matter to the price of Bitcoin or the price of the S&P 500. However, the Friday rally has fizzled. Dan Eve, what do you think about the United States government shutdown and the idea that once again, chaos is our brand and crisis is good for Bitcoin, so maybe Bitcoin and gold do just fine?
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch from this side of the pond, and I'm not going to lie, you probably won't find this part as funny, but the sombrero memes are kind of, they're pretty wacky, aren't they? With the mariachi band and stuff. It's crazy that politics has literally turned into meme wars from the actual White House Twitter account. So it's not just a case of like 4chan.
And it got worse than that. They actually played the sombrero on the African-American Hakeem Jeffries in the White House briefing room on loop, as if to really rub it in that we are owning this. It's not just a tweet, not just a video. We are defining our brand on obvious and disgusting racism. Additionally, the president launched a video this morning depicting himself and JD Vance as if they were in a metal band wearing black hoods with Russ Vought from Project 2025 as the Grim Reaper. And people are losing their jobs for real. People are furloughed. Real life things are happening, and they're playing memes. And to hear them defend it, they say, oh, it's a very serious time and we're sad people are losing their jobs. The president just likes to have a little fun, just a little humor, but it's a very serious time. Losing the cognitive dissonance you have to hold these two ideas in your head at the same time is unbelievable.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of conflict going on over that side, but I mean it's kind of been escalating for a while. Even like I've been watching Gavin Newsom's account. They're starting to retort with memes finally, and because he what was it? He had JD Vance as a munchkin, and who else? And someone else. So it's starting to be tit for tat. It's not just one-sided. Although it does obviously, there's the official White House accounts, and even like isn't the Department of Justice or something, or Homeland Security even posting crazy memes. But
well, it's very strange, and it's a violation of the Hatch Act, where government offices are not to be used for political campaigns. So it's obviously going to come back in the courts. But instead of just saying, our website is down due to the government shutdown, these agencies, and these are like generic agencies like Department of Forestry, like they don't have anything political to say. They're protecting the forests. And their website now says, the radical left has shut down the government, blah, blah, blah. It's really, really, really hard to say that it's not completely insane.
Yeah, it is. But there's also the stimmy checks might be coming, right? That's another bit of news that may have pumped Bitcoin, because obviously the last time that happened was during COVID in 2020, and the stimmy checks kind of were really instrumental, it seems, in that rally, right? There were so many people that were posting their pictures of buying their Bitcoin as soon as they got their stimmy check through. But the impact's going to be a lot less, right? Because now Bitcoin's market cap is it's in the trillions, multi-trillions. But back then it was, Bitcoin was what, 20K when the stimmy checks came out in 2020. Now it's like 120K. So they're going to have less of an impact. But I can imagine quite a lot of people delving straight into Bitcoin as soon as they get those checks through, if they come.
Well, that would be quite a lot to see stimulus checks again. There's no Congress. There's no way to pass anything. Nothing could ever happen. The president doesn't have access to funds. It's a very bad time, the government shutdown. It's a worse time with the kind of leadership we have right now, where they seem to publicly and from their own mouths saying that they want to cut, quote, Democrat departments, which again, I don't know there's anything so democratic about having your meat checked to make sure it's not dirty and full of viruses, having your car checked to see if it's safe. Very democratic and radical ideas that we'll be losing soon. We will be continuing to cover the government shutdown. I think it's going to be a long one. I'd like to see that they'd come to some kind of agreement, but I don't see it now. And I think the other side, unfortunately, sees this as an advantage, time to do whatever they want with the government, almost like the Enabling Act of 1933. Vlad Costa, what do you think about the government shutdown in the United States and the alarming new idea that it's good for cryptocurrency and Bitcoin?
Well, to be honest, I don't think about it at all, but we always said that Bitcoin is this bet against the establishment. So I guess this is one of these instances where we actually get to see that these narratives are playing out. I'm not sure if it's real, as in, I'm not sure if we actually have retail, the average person actually buying Bitcoin because they don't trust their government anymore. It's just that I think we're about to enter a bubble, and before bubbles, we have investors like VC people or whatever putting their money into something, and then they get on the news and they talk about it, and that's when the retail investors are going to rush in and FOMO. And I think we're in the early stage of this. Maybe it's just a coincidence, and it was planned to happen anyway. We're 1 year past the halving, and we sort of expected this to happen. It's just that it's a coincidence that at the same time the US government is shutting down. It would be nice to actually see the average American losing faith in the system and deciding that, okay, it's time to go full Bitcoin. I'm not very hopeful for that. And once again, we didn't scale very well. Like, the ways in which 1 million people can join Bitcoin today are mostly custodial, unless you're going to pay a lot of fees. And yeah, I don't know what else I should add here. I'm not American. I'm in Eastern Europe. We have some of our own problems here, like increased taxes, recession in my country. There's a war across the border. So it's not really nice. It almost feels wrong to some level. But once again, why should everyone suffer when your politicians are messing up? Like, you feel a bit wrong when you realize that you're not suffering the same consequences as the rest of the people around you. But then again, well, why should anyone suffer at all? It makes me just want to tell people, get into Bitcoin. Why didn't you? Like, you've been listening to what they told you on the news, and this is where you got.
It is tragic and sad, Vlad. So many friends who haven't gotten into Bitcoin. And to agree with Starship in the chat, I'm not sure if retail is going to get in. They see the price at $120,000. They hear it used to be 300, it used to be 10,000. You try to explain them. You can buy 10% of a Bitcoin. You can buy 1% of a Bitcoin. You don't have to buy a whole one. But we always go back to that argument. They always come in with a goal to buy Bitcoin, come back with a bunch of Litecoin or wacky coin or some kind of coin. So I do think that keeps happening. But it is easy to say that government does nothing and that government is worthless. But remember, this happens to be one party controlling the government in the United States, and this is how they're choosing to run it. They control all three branches and the Supreme Court. They can do whatever they want. And what they've chosen is to have the government shut down. So they actually, in their view, seem to get more power. In the short term, they believe they can do that. There's also some people that believe, with the recent victory of the Democratic woman in the Arizona special election, that there's now 218 votes in the House to release the Epstein files. And if the House were to reconvene, that vote would go down and the people would be exposed. So maybe there's a reason to keep the government closed, but for now it does seem like it gains some people more power. So they're going to keep it closed. We're going to keep an eye on this. And of course, the price of Bitcoin. Now, to predict the price of Bitcoin, Dan Eve predicting against the magical Bitcoin predictor ball. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week? I know last week there was a lot of pessimism out there. I stuck to my bullish guns. Look where we are now, almost an all-time high. Some saying that it could come during this show because of the power of you clicking the like button. We had about 13 likes last week, well down from 20. So maybe you guys could push the like button this week. I'll tell you early in the show while you're still watching. But here we go, Dan. Higher or lower? Starship in the chat says 130 this week. Higher.
Yeah, I'm
Dan's
going for higher as well.
so
Definitely all-time high within 7 days. It's got to be.
Vlad Costa, higher or lower the price of Bitcoin next week?
We're in the middle of, actually not even the middle. It's the beginning of what we call October. It's only the 3rd day of the month. I can't be bearish right now. I'm sorry. Maybe next year.
And yes, maybe it has nothing to do with the shutdown, nothing to do with all that, just has to do with the happening. But of course, I remain bullish. But what about the ball? Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? And the ball says, very hard to read, says outlook. Outlook good. Outlook good. The ball is positive. We're going up. Moving on to issue 2. Walmart-backed fintech OnePay is bringing crypto to its banking app, sources say. OnePay customers will have access to Bitcoin either later this year with the help from startup Zero Hash. By allowing OnePay users to hold Bitcoin and Ether in their mobile app, customers could presumably convert their crypto into cash and then use those funds to make purchases or pay off card balances. On the very first episode of the Bitcoin Group, you can go back and check it out with Andreas Antonopoulos, Derek J. Freeman, and Davi Barker. We talked about Walmart accepting Bitcoin, and now, in a way, they do. Vlad Costa, what do you think about the latest announcement of this Walmart-related banking crypto fund that you could put your money in there and then spend it on purchases at Walmart, as we predicted on this show oh so long ago?
I really don't get how this is revolutionary or great, or it's not directly Walmart letting you pay with Bitcoin. It's just one of their companies deciding that you can now use your debit card with Bitcoin. And I don't see how it's different from other products out there in the US. I remember there was a lot of hype surrounding the Gemini card that gives you 3% back every time you pay. No, I think that's only for fiat, but I think you can also put your Bitcoin there. There is a Coinbase card. There are all of these companies that have a similar product, and this one supposedly only lets you pay in Walmart. I don't see why you would get this. Maybe they should set up a system of incentives where you get some points or you receive some Bitcoin back, but I just don't get how this is any special compared to something that's already out there.
The Coinbase card is recently released, and depending on your balances in Coinbase, it depends on how much of a reward you get, maybe around 2%, which is more than the credit card companies. Gemini, I think it's 3%, but then it's like, it's on certain categories. It's that thing again, like the Discover card and other cards. Dan Eve, what do you think about the Walmart-backed company allowing you to spend money in Walmart, kind of?
Yeah, I think I'm with Vlad. It's not like huge news, but it's all about the public perception, right? Because Walmart's a tried, it's a tried and tested brand in the US. It's been around for a long time. It's a local sort of store, so everyone sort of knows the name, and everyone over in Europe probably knows the name of Walmart, right? And so any big company that takes on, or even if a subsidiary of that company takes on Bitcoin, accepts Bitcoin, then it's always good for the name. In the UK, there's not. I think the Coinbase card. There is a Coinbase card. I'm not sure if the Gemini card's in the UK, but the Crypto.com card's not too bad. But you've got to kind of lock in crypto for that. But yeah, anywhere that allows you to kind of to have your Bitcoin and hold it and then only be able to only sell it at the last minute, it is quite convenient. It's cool. You don't have to go and sell it, transfer it to your bank account. You can actually just use the Bitcoin and it sells it on the spot for whatever small purchases you need. So you don't need to worry about, you know, exchange rates changing, you know, having to take out if you're buying a small purchase, like paying for your shopping, you've got to take out £200 of Bitcoin, but then Bitcoin pumps and you know, you only spent £150 of it, so you've got £50 spare that would have actually gone up. You're only using the exact amount at the time. So I think those are quite convenient, those cards, if you are using your crypto to live off.
Although it is very clear, and everyone should remember, no one gets rich out of spending their money. If you spent $100,000 and you got 3% back, you'd get $3,000. So it would be better not to spend the 100,000. Better to save it, invest it, buy food, whatever it is. You know, just live tight. The idea of all these cards, they're like, it's amazing, 3% back. Oh, you should just go out and spend more, and so you can get 3% back. You can keep 100% of your money if you save. If
Oh,
you,
for sure,
if
but
you live
you got to
cheaply.
live, right? So if you've got to pay your bills, you know, if there's stuff that's a necessity, but which is why it's cool in the US. There's a bunch of states that allow you to pay your taxes, right, in crypto. So you don't need to kind of you don't need to cash out and then pay it at whatever date and worry about the fluctuations. You can just pay it on the spot, and if you have to, right? Because obviously some people aren't they're earning their you know they might not be even earning, they're just living off of their crypto. So some unfortunately you've got to spend it like every now and then. But yeah, I agree with you, don't spend it, save it, stack sats.
There is a question from Starship in chat. He says, what about the de minimis tax rule? It seems to me that people would be cashing out into their OnePay account. So they would probably pay taxes when they cashed out. I doubt they would do it every time they shopped at Walmart. Maybe they'd put $500 in there and then spend 100. It is still an issue, though, the fact that in the United States you are supposed to be taxed on every single transaction with the capital gains of when you bought it and when you sold it and so on and so forth. Seems very difficult and almost impossible.
Well, that's true, but it's the same formula, right? At the end of the day, you still have to, if you're exporting your trades, if you're trading, right, it doesn't matter if you've got one trade or 1,000 trades, which is the trading out of you know, from Bitcoin into fiat to pay for your groceries or to pay for your council tax or whatever. You're using an Excel spreadsheet, so the you know the formula is the same, right? It doesn't matter if it's the manual workload is you know, one transaction or 1,000. If you've got a spreadsheet that does it for you, you can just be like plop, plonk it out. Or tax software, right? Because there's lots of Bitcoin kind of tax software out there.
I think the tax software is definitely the way to go. Probably run that all automatically. And I know you guys think this story isn't very important, and it certainly has no European implication. But it is nice to say that we're getting somewhere into retail and that we're getting closer and closer to that goal of Walmart actually accepting cryptocurrency, even if this is yet again through another company, through a startup, through another way where Walmart's going to make a bunch of money if this startup is successful. So I'm not certainly saying that we should use whatever this startup is, but it's a neat idea. And we're getting closer and closer to retail. More people are saying, oh, Bitcoin, that's part of normal banking. That's not criminal, deep underground money or whatever it is. So we continue to move on. Moving on, check out worldcryptonetwork.com. It's been 11 years, 10 months, and 1 day since our first video, and the price of Bitcoin has done nothing but go up since then. Moving on to issue 3. Could the Bitcoin price reach $10 million by 2040? The Bitcoin price game continues to expand as everyone's saying more and more. Predictions like $130, $180, and even $200,000 are now seen as casual jokes. If you really want to get some headlines, you've got to go $1 million. You've got to go 10 million. Vlad Costa, what do you think about the price of Bitcoin hitting $10 million by 2040?
Sure, why not? But then again, you have to ask yourself, well, 2040 is 15 years from now. What's the price of a loaf of bread gonna be like? If it's gonna be $100 for bread and the price of Bitcoin is 1 million, 10 million, 100 million or something, well, sure. I mean, give me like $1 billion and I will buy one Bitcoin from someone with $1 billion on some exchange, and then I will make the price go up, and then ask a bunch of people to do the same, and the price is gonna spike. I don't know. It's just, sure, we're gonna get rich. We're smart. We invested in the right stuff, but I just don't think about it too much.
Well, a lot of it is the new people that just got in, Vlad. They need to see that it's going up a lot. When
Oh,
I look
sure.
at
Yeah. Be bullish. Believe in this.
That's right.
It's
Be
gonna.
bullish. When I look at the short-term future, I'm like, maybe we could double, maybe we could quadruple, which is really good in stock market terms. You go up 5% a year. We're talking about 100% a year, 200%, 400%, right? But that's not enough for these people. They want 2,000%. They want 20,000%. They want to put in $1,000 and come out millionaires. And that was 5 years ago. That was 10 years ago. I mean, I don't think that's really a thing now to say, although Bitcoin's still good, the technology is still good, who knows what happens in 2040. But like Vlad says, they need to give it to me in Big Macs. How many Big Macs can I buy with $10 million in 2040? And then I'll be able to really determine. Dan, Eve,
Well, also, I want to add something that we need a 10x right now to reach the market cap of gold. And maybe it sounds like, okay, Bitcoin is better than gold, so we're gonna make it. But you have to think about the thousands of years that it took for gold to be accepted as money. And there are parts of the world where gold is super important and is part of the culture. And they save in gold, they pass on gold from one generation to the other. So I don't know. Maybe we're gonna flip gold, but for that, okay, let's be optimistic. 10x from here is $1,200,000, 1.2 million. Maybe we're gonna get there, but once again, are we really as prevalent as gold? Are we as present? Do we have the same recognition for this? I think it's a bit too early.
They've yet to change the name of the pawn shop to Gold, Silver, and Bitcoin Pawn Shop. So we're still running behind. There's a lot of gold jewelry being advertised on TV. They're not advertising Bitcoin jewelry yet. Dan, Eve, what do you think? $10 million? Seems like a good deal.
Well, I mean, if it's what's the big number that the 600 billion that became a meme? Obviously, that could be way into the future, and obviously even 10 million. But as we're saying, right, it all depends on what the price of a Big Mac is, because it could be that we hit hyperinflation around the world, and everything goes up, gold goes up accordingly, because in that 10 years that it takes for Bitcoin to reach whatever amount of time it is to reach 10 million, gold could end up doubling or tripling. So Bitcoin would actually have to go, if gold doubles, then Bitcoin would have to go 20x. And then what happens when we start mining asteroids, right? We can't be that far away with all these crazy ass spaceships that are going up, and got to be mining asteroids. There's almost unlimited gold out there, right? So who knows? But what's more interesting is that I was just checking out the charts, BitInfo charts, and the hash rate is currently sitting at, and this is just incredible, 999.14 exahashes, and it's already peaked over into zeta hashes, like that's, which is just nuts. Zeta hashes of hashing power, which is sextillion, a sextillion. So that's one with like 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21 zeros. That's just an insane amount of computational power, all solving Bitcoin blocks right now. That's one zeta hash a second. That's just incredible. So yeah, so maybe we are going to see this all-time high, because it's pretty much hash rates at an all-time high right now. So it kind of, because the actual price follows the hash rate, right? And also global M3 money supply. That just seems to be, that's going to be creeping up. There's going to be a lot of printing going on by the sounds of it. Some more infinite money at the Fed. Who knows?
That's what Max Kaiser always said, that the price follows the hash rate. We do have some comments from the chat. Khan says that Bitcoin's a part of El Salvador's culture. So we have one small country, probably Silicon Valley, maybe New York City, a couple other places, Berlin, Amsterdam maybe. And Starship reminds us that at $10 million a coin, 1 sat equals $1, which would be quite amazing, having watched it from 10,000 or from $1 to 1,000 and 25,000 sats, I think it was originally, or 50,000 for $1, something like that. You could have done very well back in the day, and maybe you still can. I agree with Con. We're looking for a big Mac index, and they don't want to tell you that. They're like, in the future, your Bitcoin will buy you 20 hamburgers, but that'll actually be very good. Hamburgers are very expensive. So we'll just have to see. Moving on to the next issue, grab bag. You choose the issue. BlackRock has filed for a Bitcoin yield ETF as their sequel to IBIT. BlackRock registered a Delaware trust for a new Bitcoin premium ETF, generating yield through covered call options. All the old goodies and things you used to love about finance are coming to Bitcoin. We've also got ICE raids. Texas, a Bitcoin mine in Pyote, Texas, was raided by ICE. Chinese assistants from the Bitmain company were on hand to set up the facility. Helicopters, snipers, armed men attacked the alleged immigrants who were there to set up a Bitcoin mine in Pyote, Texas. Previously, a Hyundai battery plant was attacked by ICE. The men from South Korea who were there to set up the battery plant were taken into custody, and now they're not going to build the battery plant at all, leaving it. And a message from Twitter, over $1.4 billion has been returned to 100,000 people from the FTX estate, with Kraken FX helping make that possible. Shout out to Kraken, as well as all of the FTX clients who just got some of their money back from the bankruptcy estate. Dan, Eve, which topic would you like to talk about? Kraken helping to return the FTX money, the ICE raids on a Bitcoin mine in Texas, or BlackRock filing a sequel for their very popular Bitcoin ETF?
Oh, I think so. I've been following Argent Sefi recently because he's got some pretty good some pretty good content, and I'm also not going to lie, I still have some of a shitcoin from 2017 when I was mining in 2016, 2017, called Pepe coin, and he seems to be they've released this game called Kek.space, and I'm not promoting it, but I follow it quite a lot, and it's this cool little Pepe based game with this little world, and they've got a little Kraken feature in it. So he's been dipping in and out of that game. But what's really cool is that people are actually getting their money back from FTX, and there's probably quite we say this a lot. I mean, obviously, it's always better holding your own coins, but a lot of these people probably would have sold like way before it hit the peak of like 67K, and so at least they're getting something back, right? When they would have sold. Obviously, I think now that Bitcoin's 120K, 122K, there may be opportunity for FTX, like 100% fulfilling people's requirements, right? But at least people are getting something back, because most of the CACs back in the day, obviously apart from empty Gox, people were left empty-handed, like from Cryptsy to MintPal and all these other ones, BitGrail, and all these other crazy old exchanges. So it's good news when people actually get something back. And also, just on that as well, slightly similar news was in the UK. The biggest ever Bitcoin theft, which was 61,000 Bitcoin, I think. It was a Chinese lady. 61,000. So from Chinese nationals, Zimin Yan, she admitted to defrauding people. So that's currently in the UK's coffers. We've got 61,000 Bitcoin at least, but I think that's going to be returned to people in theory, right? Because if it was defrauded, then eventually it's going to go back to them.
That is an interesting story, Dan. They say they caught her because she was attempting to buy real estate. What a strange thing to do when you have so many Bitcoins. Just showing again, even the people stealing them and stealing a lot of them really don't understand what they have. And it reminds me of those other guys that got caught trading it for Walmart, for Tide Pods and PlayStation 5s, the Razzlecon and all that. Vlad Costa, what would you like to talk about? BlackRock filing for a Bitcoin ETF sequel, or the ICE raids on a Bitcoin mine in Texas?
ICE raids. It's more fun.
And what do you think about the ICE raids? It seemed once again We're always trying to work with foreign governments, get some investment, get some business in the United States. And then we do, and ha ha ha, surprise, we bust them all. We're the Looney Tunes of immigration.
Oh, it's really interesting because if you really want to use Bitcoin in a criminal way, the best way is to get coins that have no history. So if you're mining Bitcoin, you're basically the best resource for people who want to do stuff that may not be liked by governments. So maybe that there was something shady in there and they were doing some interesting dealings. But I think I read this post by Greg Maxwell when in 2013 he introduced the concept of coin joins on Bitcoin Talk. He explained that basically even if you do get some sort of privacy with your Bitcoins, they still have a history and there are still techniques to trace and link transactions between themselves. And the only way you can actually have privacy on Bitcoin is to have coins with zero history whatsoever that have just been mined. So it is interesting. Like you could actually write some sort of action film or novel about the espionage and everything happening with Chinese people coming to the US for the purpose of mining Bitcoin and then sending these Bitcoin, I don't know exactly where and what kind of stuff they were doing there, sending their technicians to enable the ASIC boost on their Bitmain mining machines. I don't know. For me, it's fascinating. It proves that there is more to this otherwise boring activity, which is called mining. You just start a computer there and wait, and then maybe maintain it, make sure it's always online. But yeah, it's much more interesting than the BlackRock story, to be honest. Like we're going back to no, I don't think we're going back there. That's what's funny about it because it's BlackRock. And for some reason we decided we can trust it. We're not gonna ask the same question as in 2021 when we had all of these yield farming, DeFi, whatever. And people were saying, well, so where does the yield come from? Where does it come from? If you don't know where it comes from, it means you're the yield. This time around, it's BlackRock. And we're like, BlackRock, it's legit. They have portfolio with some of the biggest companies in the world, and they're legit. They're in cahoots with the US government. They're gonna get bailed out if something goes wrong. But at the same time, it feels stupid. And it also alludes to the fact that they might be generating some sort of inflation with paper Bitcoin.
Well, we all remember the great movie The Big Short, when the guy was making the bets against the housing market and Bank of America was laughing at him as he was talking about, I'm not sure if you can cover your side of the bet. I want you to be putting up additional collateral. I don't believe that you will cover it. And then, of course, when he did win, when he was correct about the housing market, they weren't covering it. They were finding ways to worm out of their agreements, and they were trying to pay him less than they owed him, which, again, is that classic Beach Boys thing where, heads you win, tails I lose. It's not fair. It's not fair. And it's interesting, like Vlad was saying with the mining, when we put on this metaphor of mining, you think, of course, of pickaxes and diamonds, and they're getting the gold out of the environment. And it's so interesting, you can set up this mine anywhere in the world, connect to this universal underground of Bitcoin, bring the Bitcoins up out of there. But like Vlad says, it's a big issue what happens next. Some of those Bitcoins could go to the black market. They could go out the back door, like dirty diamonds or something, and all kinds of underground things could be happening as people start valuing these clean Satoshis more and more. Maybe some billionaire, backs up to the truck and buys a bunch of things at the mine. You have no idea because there are no trucks. He doesn't even have to go there. But maybe this was happening. We have no idea, but it is an interesting story, the trouble in Texas. That leaves me the BlackRock story to talk about. We just kept this one up because it's a great story about how Wall Street continues to get involved in Bitcoin. BlackRock must have made tons of money on their initial Bitcoin ETF. So, of course, they've launched another one, of course, going back to the Big Short. And when Satoshi actually invented Bitcoin, he was actually against this and probably would still be against it. All these strange financial vehicles being attached to Bitcoin the same way that we saw in the mortgage crisis, where empty boxes full of bad loans were marked as good loans and then sold to other people. This would be a similar situation, and I would agree with Vlad to watch out for those paper Bitcoins. Of course, we talk all the time, if people have money in their stock market account, they don't want to pay the 10%, which isn't that much, penalty for selling early or something like that. They're locked in. Maybe they could buy this ETF. Maybe they want to dabble in the yield. Who knows? But this is yet another professional financial instrument, presumably, like Vlad says, backed by a large company that will pay you when you win. But as we know, it seems different. They always take the money when you lose. They don't always pay out when you win. And moving on to our final issue of the show, I think that the war's over without firing a shot. I need more technical information on this. Maybe you guys can tell me in the chat. Maybe Vlad has information. But according to bitcoinnews.com, Bitcoin Core has underappreciated the data carrier and data carrier size config options. This means that node operators remain precise control over op return transactions, deciding whether to relay them and how much data they can carry. It seems as with these options, the war's over without firing a shot. If you run a node and you're one of these old-timey node generators who doesn't want that weird data on your node, you could adjust it down. If you're one of these newfangled data operators who doesn't care about data or transactions obviously being more valuable in my opinion, you can turn the data up. Vlad Costa, what do you think? Is this the end of the war? Has Core cleverly found a way out of this by depreciating options and kind of bending and flexing something that the other side's incapable of? Or does the war continue? Am I misreading? What do you think, Vlad?
So it was deprecated, but honestly, so can you please switch back to the screenshot or the Twitter feed? Because there was the first comment, which is Adam back asking for a link. Okay, so he got the link. I was actually curious if this is fake news, and he said better. Okay. So basically now node runners can choose whatever carrier size they want for their op returns. It's honestly a compromise, which might be a little too late to please the guys who are radical about not changing anything. But I don't know. It's not such a big deal, to be honest. You get to choose what you store on your own computer. It's reasonable. You can already prune your node if you don't want to store all the transactions and only focus on the stuff that you are transacting and relaying. I don't know why we got to this culture where people run nodes like they're serving the network or whatever, because the exchanges do it, the miners do it. You're not really helping the network at all. They think that there's some sort of policeman of the network just because they run 24/7. If you're not using it for yourself, it's kind of useless and pointless. You should validate your own transactions and try to get the benefits that you get from a node in terms of privacy. And that's kind of it. I don't know. To me, all of this debate seemed very silly. I think it has more to do with not being happy with the core developers and the core team, and maybe considering that the average Bitcoin user feels detached from their technical elitism, than it actually has to do with these stupid parameters. Because you can already put all the data that these people are protesting about, and you could do it before SegWit, also with multi-sigs, but you would have to pay a lot of money. There's already WikiLeaks files on your node, which arguably can be illegal in some countries. There's already the stuff that you fear the most that someone put out there, but it's encoded in a way that is hard to identify. It's not like you're gonna double click on the blocks that you're storing and then you find JPEGs of whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's good and it's gonna lead to some sort of peace and compromise, but the kind of stuff that I've seen from the Bitcoin nuts people is horrible and makes me feel detached from, or makes me want to detach, not just feel detached. Makes me want to just stay away from it. There's nothing reasonable or good. It's not a technical conversation. It's just a bunch of Karens screaming and saying you're hurting my feelings and you can do this with Bitcoin and I don't like it, but you could do it the whole time. It's just that they finally woke up. I think it was a very smart. I've read a very smart post by the guy who's running the BitMEX research account, who pointed out that this conversation has already been had in 2010, and Satoshi was a participant, and Hal Finney was a participant, and Tamos was a participant, and a lot of people tuned in, and they had the exact same concerns that someone can put child porn on the blockchain. It's crazy. It's like every generation wants to manufacture or find something to feel concerned about and feel important. This time it's just that we got to this point of adoption where non-technical people are also running nodes and they feel like they are entitled to have a degree of control, which is reasonable in this decentralization, but it's unreasonable when you have no idea what you're talking about and you're just inventing a religion around something which should be technical. And these people only talk in metaphors. They're like, oh, filters are like speed limits or something. And they're like, yeah, I can choose to have a speed limit next to my house. I'm like, no, really, that's not really what's happening. It's a very bad metaphor, and you're not really preventing anything. Just because you're not storing something in your mempool doesn't mean that you're not gonna store the block after it gets mined. And that's where the files are, in the block, not in the mempool. But I don't know. It's too much.
It does seem like there's this idea, Vlad, and I think it spread after the UASF trouble, where there's an army of independent node runners who are out there and they're going to save the day. And that someday the network's going to have a crisis, like I keep talking about when the banking community and the financial community realize what they've been backing, realize that they've pulled the Trojan horse inside the walls. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's full of Greeks. When they realize that, they're going to have to shut off all their nodes. And there's this idea that the mighty army of little node runners will rise up to save us. And this is a ridiculous idea because, like you're saying, the current nodes are mainly run by exchanges, by large people anyway. This little army of node runners, your node on your desk running a Raspberry Pi, is not going to be able to support the network now. It's not going to support later. But after UASF, I think people got all enamored and excited because they signaled for UASF and they won the war with signaling. As Eric Lombroso said, signaling was never defined for that. It was never supposed to be that. And then we got all confused that you could vote in Bitcoin, and it's never really been a democracy. Core is not a democracy. It's more of a scientific open source project where the best ideas rise to the top, ideally, and the worst ideas are rejected. And like you say, Vlad, none of this has to do with metaphor of how good you are at arguing and how good you are at whipping up the people. Because if there's 5 people on the committee and they're all postdoctorate computer science guys, they're not going to be moved by all your emotional arguments. They're going to look at it on a technical basis, and they're going to decide based on that. I also want to give a shout out to RJD in the chat. He says that I made a mistake on the language, so I want to go through that. I said depreciated, which means to diminish in value over the time, but I should have said deprecated, where something is marked for or discouraged for further removal because it's outdated and inferior. RJD says not depreciated, but deprecated, meaning the op return size being selectable is being put on the chopping block. That is to be removed from the next update, but that sounds like they've changed their mind and they'll allow people to continue to decide how much data they want on their node. Dan, Eve, what do you think about the continued fight over op return and data and so on and so forth?
So again, this puts more control back into the node runner's hands. But I think, like you said, there's like the core principles, right, of Bitcoin. There's kind of like 3 main ones, which is like, Bitcoin is purely money. Bitcoiners should run their own node, and they should hold their own keys. But there's always going to be variations of that, and some people the options just aren't viable for some people. They think that running a node is too complicated. There's plenty of other different ways or easy ways of running a node. You can buy prefab nodes, right? You've got like the I don't know if they're still going, but Casa nodes. You've got the nodal nodes, and there's just quite a lot of easy click and setup. Click wizard setup nodes that you can run, but obviously you've got to have the hardware for that. which is why there's such a big argument originally over Blockspace that you want to make it as accessible as possible. So you don't need to have the latest hardware, the best hard drive, the biggest hard drive in order to be able to run a node. It needs to be as simple and easy as possible. So the less data and bloat that you do have in there, the more opportunity you have for a bigger variety of people to actually run a node. But it's still not possible for everyone, right? There's probably like I mean, obviously we go to a lot of Bitcoin conferences and quite a lot of people run nodes there. But the average person, especially those that kind of just use the mainstream services, they may understand the concept of Bitcoin just as money. But to them, they're not going to run a node. They may eventually have their own keys, even if they own their own private keys. And they don't use centralized services, they may not get to the stage where they're actually running a node and really understand or even care about the fact that data might be on there. Obviously, there's the off-putting stuff when as soon as you mention the child images, for example, which could scare people off of running a node altogether. So there's that argument, right? The less data that you have on there, the less people you'll scare away because they're not aware of the nuances around the fact that data on there is largely encrypted. So whatever is stored on the chain, as Vlad also mentioned, like the WikiLeaks data, it's not as easily accessible, and therefore it's not just something that by having a Bitcoin blockchain completely downloaded that you are in custody of this awful data that's on there, because it's a lot more nuanced than that. It's not quite as simple as you've got the data. That it needs to be unencrypted and using different software or whatever, even to find JPEGs, right? You don't just have the straight JPEG on there. You've got to have software that converts it in some way. So yeah, it does seem like there's a bit more tribalism. Whether this will eventually lead
Also,
to
sorry for interrupting. I just want to say that Paul Stortz posted this tweet where you can take any Bitcoin transaction and transform it into a JPEG, because there's this online generator that automatically turns any string of letters and numbers into an image. And basically he argued everything that is on Bitcoin can be a JPEG.
That's a good point. Yeah, exactly. You could kind of, it may not be a legible JPEG, but it could be some sort of, it could be just converted into an image. And then by the laws of average, the law of averages, one thing or one string, it will be converted into something that looks dodgy, like a dick pic or something like that. I don't know. But you're not, no one's going to not download the blockchain just because you can convert anything, because then it becomes like some sort of numerology thing where you can create like random connections out of any string of numbers and letters. So yeah, it's a good thing that we have like certain controls over, and people people can actually run their own different software. Whether it's going to lead to a hard fork down the line, I don't know if Luke's army's, of course the Knots army's big enough, but his comment is that no, his comment is no, it doesn't. It's still broken, and it's still an unacceptable default. So he's definitely not giving up. Although people are saying the war's over without firing a shot, I don't think that Luke's quite given up just yet.
Well, there's always leftovers like the Japanese in the caves after World War II who continue fighting, even though the world has moved on.
Yeah.
There's also that interesting idea from leftover from UASF that running nodes and signaling counts as voting. We've seen how easily this can be manipulated with people allegedly running NOTs nodes on AWS and other services like that where they're hosted and they're fake nodes, leading again to why we shouldn't be trusting node running as voting, and it's not really intended that way. And I hate to say this because it's going to drive people crazy, but during the block size wars, when everyone was talking about node centralization and how you'd have to have giant computers to run a node, or you'd be the trusty node runner with their Raspberry Pi and their independent hard drive, it was again more of a metaphor that the network could get entrenched, so it's all servers.
It was also a slippery slope. Like, that's the worst case scenario in both extremes. It doesn't mean, like, you look at Bitcoin Cash today, it didn't actually, I think it has fewer transactions than the real Bitcoin, but that's because of network effects. But it never got to that level where people were concerned that it's going to become unsustainable. And they were able to basically stress test the network to run on a Raspberry Pi also with more storage. It wasn't the end of the world, but I guess I I think in 2017 people had more reasonable and better presented arguments, more technical. Now it's more about feelings. It's about this one dev who has gone rogue and is trying to build his own cult. And I would not be surprised to find out that many of these participants are feds because they found the sweet spot, right? They touch this button and they're like, you're putting porn on the blockchain. And it's very hard to argue against that. Like, it's a permissionless network. You could say the same about BitTorrent. You could say the same about anything on the internet that is open and lets anyone contribute. Like, if you really want to do something harmful, I remember, I'm not sure if it's a relevant example, but there was this kid video game called Club Penguin. And it was on purpose neutered so that you could only type friendly messages on the chat. You could only do a limited list of activities. Like, it was for kids to play this MMORPG. But they found ways, for example, to open up multiple accounts and line up multiple characters in game to draw swastikas on the screen. Like, they actually pulled that off. If you really want to do something offensive or illegal or whatever, you're going to find ways. And somehow that's fine. You go after the exception. You don't try to basically establish limits and rules, assuming that everyone's going to be that exception.
I do recall part of that story, Vlad. I think they had some trouble about getting into the pool or not getting into the pool, and they managed to use that as a metaphor for racism and so on and so forth, black people being not allowed in pools in the past, things like that. And going back to the nodes, I really think you're right. It was an extreme view on each end. We don't want all servers and we don't want all Raspberry Pis at home. What we want is a middle way with mostly servers, probably, because we all know how servers run, how they have good network connections and live in data centers with backup power and all kinds of things like that. But we'd also like to have some home nodes as an option in case the servers fail or are shut down by an act of God or dictatorship or something like that. You might want to use a small node in that case. But I think what happened, Vlad, is that one side maybe got all into the servers, but the other side that's kind of left with us, they got all into the mighty node runner and this idea that you could run Bitcoin at home. And these are the people I think who are running those bit axes, where you run like a lottery ticket, where maybe you'll get a Bitcoin and maybe you'll get struck by lightning. Like, it's absurd. Like, and back in my day, the miners were like, yeah, we get a fee share. We make $100 a month. You know, it's not so great, but they weren't like, oh, we're going all or nothing on the lottery ticket. Like, it was a completely different style where, like, yeah, maybe we could cover our power with a couple $100 a month and we could break even on mining, rather than like, I mine for the lotto, I mine for the lightning strike. And in the same way, I think these individual node runners, they think that then that network is them. And then they're like, oh, then the network has bad data on it. That's me. I am that network. I have bad data on me. I'm a small node runner. And then we have that whole thing with the up in arms node runners when the rest of us are out here having cypherpunk pirate money that is sent to anyone in the world without restriction, which obviously a sane and normal person could say, yes, that's good, but that's also bad. Bad people could get sent that money. But at its core, if you go back to what money is, medium of exchange and that stuff, you're like, well, I guess bad people use money too, you know? And the same for $100 bills and pallets full of them in Iraq and whatever, gangsters and all these things, tips under the table, all these things, bad people using money. So if Bitcoin's money, it's going to be used by good people, it's going to be used by bad people. We have to
I think
accept.
ultimately this just leads to government stepping in and saying, well, I guess you guys can censor, right? So why don't you all censor? They can actually pass legislation to make filters, for example, mandatory within a jurisdiction. And it's really silly. Like, you can run your node on top of Tor. You don't really have to be in that country. It's just going to lead to a situation where everyone's going to turn on their VPN or Tor, and nobody's going to based in that country. But I don't know how we got here in the first place. But unlike you, I don't think I want to knock on miners too hard, because I can argue that someone who's mining on a tiny device is more useful to the network than someone spinning up a Raspberry Pi with a copy of the blockchain. And if you add up, like, if everyone had one of these tiny bit axes in their home, I think Bitcoin would be much more decentralized and there would be more concern because large industrial ASICs are limited in supply. They can only make maybe a few hundreds of them or thousands of them every month. But these tiny devices, if they existed in every home, they could actually make up a pretty consistent, like 10% mining pool that can actually be powerful and influential in Bitcoin decision making. Once again, 51% of miners can actually activate soft forks without asking permission from the nodes, without asking permission for the devs. I think Paul Stortz came up with this concept of the core untouched soft fork, where you just go to the miners and you get it done. You don't really have to go through the Bitcoin core politics if you really want to. So miners are much more important than we think. And I want to congratulate everyone who's mining, no matter how big or small their operation is. This is how we reach decentralization.
Well, I'll agree with you. I think miners are probably more important than node runners. So I would say they're above that. But what about the idea that this is necessary hardening for the Bitcoin network? If this CP, CSAM, whatever it is, if it can take us down, then we're weak, right? Vlad, this is an easy assault. We all agree this is the quickest and easiest to say that there is bad data on your network. Therefore, we're taking down your network. We're making you all criminals, which again, I keep saying is going to happen anyway, that Bitcoin is underground criminal money and that we're in a unique time where Wall Street and other are supporting it. What do you think, Vlad?
I think it's silly. I think that instead of focusing on filters, we should be focusing on getting more people to transact on the Bitcoin network so that the fees go up, and inscribing any kind of data, regardless of type or depiction or anything else, becomes very expensive. Right now, the reason why there's data on Bitcoin is that we were not able to figure out any use case. And there has been a campaign for many years that went on saying, well, you should not use the base layer, go to the Lightning Network, use the Lightning Network. Unless your transaction is larger than $1,000, use the Lightning Network. And this just led to a lot of people becoming complacent with custodians because that's how Lightning is mostly being used. It's very difficult to run an actual sovereign node and balance your own channels and have transactions going through all the time. It's very convenient to use a custodian. It's also convenient, but a bit more challenging to use what they call an LSP, which is someone providing to you the infrastructure for the Lightning node, and you open your own channels with them, but it's kind of bad for privacy. So what can I say? We are at a point where we failed to find a good use case for Bitcoin's Blockspace. And the miners are not getting paid. They're happy to mine whatever gets to them. We also got to a point where I think the reasoning behind this decision to increase the upper return with version 30 of Bitcoin Core is more about services such as Marathon Mining's Slipstream, which is just a service where you go and you pay the miner to add your transaction into a block. And the transaction doesn't even have to be transmitted to the mempool. So basically, the Bitcoin network is not going to know what's happening there. It doesn't even have to be CP or whatever you want to call it. Let's say you want to inscribe a 4 megabyte JPEG of your dog. There's nothing illegal about that. It's a permissionless network. You go to Mara, the mining pool, and they're going to do this for a fee. And you're going to bypass entirely the whole process involving nodes and the mempool and having the transaction mined by a random miner, the one that finds the block. It just goes to a miner that decides that they're going to include that. I think to this day, F2 pool, they still have a 0 fee for their transactions. I think they do that on purpose just to flex. Like they don't pay any fee when they have some of their own transactions that they want to include. And the miners can do a lot. That's why I think, on one hand, more people should mine. On the other hand, we should find some actual use cases to use Bitcoin, which is why I'm bullish on these ZK rollups, because even though Luke Dash Jr.'s faction is going to say that they're horrible and putting data on Bitcoin is horrible, they're going to be filling up the blocks with ZK proofs, which are going to be used by layer 2s as data anchors to validate what's happening in there. And with stuff like Alpine Labs or Citrea, we're going to have all the features from Ethereum on a layer 2, which inherits the security of the Bitcoin blockchain, uses BTC, the token, and no other token of its own natively, and it's pretty good for scaling. I mean, I do see this as a use case which actually brings more users and actually pays the miners and makes it more expensive for people to put random data or arbitrary data on the blockchain. That's the best way to filter, really. It's the transaction fees. If it becomes too expensive, people are just not gonna do it. They're gonna go elsewhere. And this can also be done on Litecoin, by the way. I don't know why they're not having this conversation there. You can actually fill entire blocks for much cheaper on Litecoin or Dogecoin or any fork. Or add privacy to Bitcoin. That's the other solution. Add privacy to Bitcoin. Make it impossible for miners to see what's in these transactions. Make it impossible for node operators to see what's in these transactions. Just make it universal.
That does sound much better. We could use privacy on Bitcoin. I do agree, Vlad. It would be great to see those anchors and other things stored in there. But I think your last point's the strongest. If this CP argument takes down Bitcoin, then it takes down Litecoin, it takes down Dogecoin, it takes down everything else, because you can store images and everything else, or you could store a little bit of text that you could combine together to make an image like Voltron. Dan, Eve, what do you think about CP being a necessary attack on Bitcoin and something that inevitably we'll have to live through, as Vlad was saying, Hal Finney and Satoshi and others arguing about it back in the day?
Well, it's definitely another kind of social attack vector, and it's going to, like I said, I think it puts people off running a node because not many, but because they don't know what's on there, they don't understand the nuances of the data being stored and how it's stored and what the potential is. But it's just the same as any other attack vector. It was, a year ago, it was talking about ordinals. Now it's talking about CP. It's going to move on to whatever topic it is, because there's always going to be data on there that people don't like, as long as that you can store data on there apart from specific financial transactions. But since we were talking about miners, every now and then I pop this bad boy out, and this was my first ASIC miner, which is an Antminer U1, which was approximate clock speed of 1.6 gigahash, and the current hash rate is actually a zettahash, which is like an insane amount more. But it would take you basically a very, very long time to even earn like 0.1 Satoshi. I mean, it will probably take about 10 years, I think, using one of these now to earn a Satoshi, because the hash rate has moved on. So it's so the latest miners. So the BitDeer Seal miner, or the S21 XP, roughly 473 terahash and 500 terahash and 472 terahash respectively, is about 412,000 times more powerful than this little ant miner. So the cool thing is, right, about mining at home is that, and I've got some Canans, or I can't remember what they're actually even called, Canans. The Nano S3 thing. But the problem is that the ones that when they have it, it's more of a novelty thing, right? It's not really a money maker, right? Unless you hit a block, like, and you're absolutely quids in. It's not really like a proper stable income for just people, unless you're doing it at scale. Because what happens is that a mining company will just like Bitmain or whatever, Bitdeer will create this new piece of hardware which is just insanely more powerful, and so it just crushes the mining power that you did even have. It used to be like really bad back in the day. It was so much more. I think it was at least so much more cutthroat. Maybe that's just because I lost out because I bought all sorts of random stuff like Block Erupted Cubes and Butterfly Labs and all sorts of other the Jupiter miners and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a nice novelty thing, but you just can't compete with the cheap electricity prices from wholesale and the hardware that comes with it.
Well, and I think that number 400,000 times faster is the big difference there, Dan. Like you say, sure, you're mining along, you're doing pretty good, getting $10 a week, and then next week they release the new miners, and now you're getting $1 a week. And all of your plans and all of your electricity savings and your trims and your tweaks and everything, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be able to fight that. And the chips do just keep getting faster and faster and faster. Of course, it's these large companies that have the money and the infrastructure to, turn off their old chips, turn on their new chips, run a giant data center. That's where the real mining seems to be happening these days. But we're running out of time, so we're going to move on to predictions or story of the week. Dan, Eve, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
I predict that I predict that Bitfest is going to be good, and it's going to be really cool because I'm still looking forward to that. That's in Bitfest at UK. That's going to be in November on the 21st to 23rd. Yeah, I think there's going to be some really good. There are some really good speakers there, and some of the WCN crews there. Are you coming, Vlad? Are you going to make it there? To Manchester, 21st of November.
Yeah, I think so. I have to get visa because apparently the UK requires that. And I also have to get that for my girlfriend because she wants to participate as an artist.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah. So that'd be really cool. There you go. So there's the three of us will be there at Bitfest, and there's like a Pepe art day. There's also a Nosta day, Nostrashire. So I think that's going to be a really cool little event. So I'm going to keep on shilling that until the date.
That sounds great, Dan. Looking forward to Bitfest. Got to get my flight tickets and everything set up soon so I can get out there. It's going to be cold, but we're going to make it. Vlad Costa, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a prediction that from all of this infighting in Bitcoin, there's gonna be back in 2017, we had this conversation between big block Bitcoin and small block Bitcoin, but the winner was Ethereum. I think right now, from this fight between spam on the blockchain versus filters and permissionless network versus some sort of consortium of high priests, we're going to have privacy coins actually benefiting from it. So Zcash went up like 150% over the last week. It's really insane. It went back into the top 100. I think right now it's at a very nice 69th position. And I've been telling people that this could have been Bitcoin. It was basically an implementation of the zero cash protocol that was proposed in 2013 for Bitcoin, and that never came. It's not even being discussed anymore, but Zcash is doing pretty good nowadays. Monero too. They're coming up with their full chain membership proofs. Zcash is working on something that's called oblivious synchronization, which is gonna bring scalability to privacy, which is huge because for the longest time, the biggest criticism that you could present to privacy ultimately was, well, it doesn't scale. Now it's gonna scale, and I'm curious what Bitcoiners are gonna say about it this time. Maybe they'll bring back that good old argument. Well, how do you verify the supply? But anyway, check out this book. It's called European Street Art. It's by this very talented photographer named Thomas Hunt. I stumbled upon it. I still open it from time to time. It has lots of pictures that are very neatly organized by year and city. So it's sort of like tourism that you're doing, but without leaving your home. It's super cool.
Oh, thanks, Vlad. I got to get those on Amazon. I've got them on a Blurb or something, but I need to get them on Amazon. But that's really cool. European Street Art by Thomas Hunt.
There's some really
There's
cool
some weird filter by Zoom. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it blurs the title for some reason, but I hope you can see it.
Yeah. See it.
Very cool. My story of the week, I'm still doing 3D printing lots of things. I printed these Lewis chessmen. They're pretty neat. They need maybe a little bit more detail, like some black lines or something. Maybe we can edit the models, but it is a neat idea. You can 3D print all kinds of stuff. I printed this Oakland Athletics coaster.
Cool.
It's a green screen, so it goes everywhere. And finally, I printed this REM sign, Barry, Buck, Mills, and Stipe. You could even put this chessboard behind it. It looks like out of time. Ha ha ha. But enjoying.
You got a multicolor printer? Is that multicolor?
Yeah, the new one. It's got 4 spools.
Which
on
one?
it.
Which one?
It's called the A1 by Bamboo Labs. It's around $500, and then you'll spend another $500 on plastic to go into it. But it melts the plastic. It does multicolors. I don't have the best examples here. I have some better stuff in the other room, but definitely been fun. 3D printing. So if you guys are into it, it's much more of a reasonable hobbyist thing that used to be. I don't know anything about the 3D printer. It does bed leveling for me automatically. It clears out itself. It does a lot of things that I think used to be a lot harder. So check out 3D printing with Bamboo Labs. And hopefully next week, maybe I'll print some Bitcoin stuff, make this more interesting for you guys. But that's about it, other than keeping an eye on the government shutdown, hoping that they restart the government soon. And we'll be keeping an eye on it here for the economic impacts on Bitcoin and gold and stocks and other things that are affected by the United States and the government. So we'll see how that goes. But thanks to everybody for joining us in the chat. Leave a comment. We read all your comments from last week. Give us a thumbs up. I think we have about 13, maybe about 30 people that watch this show. So if all 30 of you gave us a thumbs up, that would be 30. So that's all right. They say in the chat that Bamboo Labs has reached a high level of development. I agree. It's really amazing. You can print right off of your phone. You just select the model. It downloads it to your phone, to the printer. It comes out. I've had a couple of misprints lately. I think there's too much vibration on my desk, so I might move it to the floor, something like that. But really fun time, 3D printing. Although again, it's kind of starting to seem like work. Like every hour or every 4 hours, I'm like, better go change the 3D print, and I scrape it off the thing and I program in the next thing, and I'm like, am I working or is the 3D printer working? So I'm not sure, but I like everybody else. I hope someday I'm going to print little useful parts, and oh, I could fix that, and oh, I can model that, and all of that. We're not quite there yet. We just print signs and stuff. But
the print in place things are amazing. Have you seen some of the? So some I've printed like gears, like complete like gears. They're like what they called helical, whatever it is. They're amazing. They're just really cool just to have as a fidget spinner sort of thing. And
yeah, I think I've got to print one of those dragons next. Everybody's into the dragons. If you aren't familiar with this, what's neat about the 3D printer, it can build like the links, and it can build them in place. So the links are already closed and they're inside of your toy, and yet it's printing them line by line. So you don't have to connect the links or anything like that. It just comes out as a toy. It's instantly there. And a lot of people at the flea market and other places are selling these. Dan's got a phone stand there.
Phone stand, all in one place. It's hinges and all. Really cool.
It's really amazing. And there's all kinds of stuff that you can do. And it's, like I said, it's much easier than it used to be. It used to be much harder. But we're checking out 3D printing this week. You got to distract yourself somehow. So, and still enjoying Lower Decks. I'm on season 3 or 4. It's a Star Trek cartoon show if you're looking for something light. So thanks so much to everybody for joining us. Until next time,